Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to go over some MIDI problem solving solutions to help you with your MIDI programming. This can be useful to kind of figure out what MIDI messages are being sent from your MIDI devices. So there's a couple of things I'm going to show you. So for example, you can see on my screen, I'm getting all sorts of MIDI messages while I am moving faders and knobs and pushing keys and all sorts of different stuff on my MIDI controller. So this can be useful to figure out what information a MIDI controller is sending, and that might help you with your MIDI programming just to at least understand what it's doing. So before we get started, I post videos like this all the time, info about music, tech, MIDI, programming, wireless, in-ear monitors, stuff like that. So if you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to ring the bell. All right, let's get started. So the first thing that I use is this one right here. It's called MIDI Monitor by a company called Snoise. So you just go to the Snoise website, and I'll put a link down in the description. You click MIDI Monitor, get the app, and download it. And again, before anyone continues with this, I am a Mac guy. I always get questions about Windows computers. I'm just a Mac guy. If you do find a video of how to do this in Windows, please feel free to leave a comment down below, but I personally am a Mac guy. So you want to download and install the MIDI Monitor app, and then you want to open it up. So you're going to see it right here. So what you're going to get is you're going to see the sources and the filters. So in the sources, you can say, what do you want to get information from? So let me just really quickly, I'm going to connect my Rolly. So right now I have port A is my MIDI controller is plugged in, and then Bluetooth is my Rolly block right here. So those are the two things that I'm going to be controlling and getting information from. And you can see it actually already got a little bit of information from me moving this stuff around. So you can set your MIDI sources and what do you want to get MIDI information from. These honestly act as a destination for other programs. Spy on output to destinations I've honestly never even used. And then what you can do is you can filter out different messages in here. So you can say, I do not want to get system exclusive messages. I do not want to get note on and off messages. I do not want to get control change messages. I do not want to get channel pressure and stuff like that. That might make more sense here in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move this fader on my MIDI controller because I have no idea what it actually does. And you can see it says from port A, which is what it's plugged into, it's sending a control change, controller 22. And you can see the value goes up as I move up. So it gives me a lot of information of what information is being received. That's controller 22. If I move over to this next one, controller 23. Next one, controller 24, so on and so forth. If I start moving these knobs up here, controller change 9, 14, 15, so on and so forth. And I can find that out. Now you're going to find stuff like if I start hitting the keys, you can see note on and note off. I mean, most people are able to figure that out. You know, that's not a very difficult thing to figure out that this is a G3 or whatever. But something like this, where I have my pads right here, my drum pads, I don't know what notes those are sending. So now when I hit that, it says this note is sending a C1, this one, C sharp 1, D1, and then I can figure it out from there. D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and so on and so forth. So then I can push, like the stop button. And that is sending song position, the system exclusive. That stuff is honestly a little bit over my head. I'm not really sure what to do with system exclusive stuff yet. I plan to learn a little bit, but I haven't had to use it yet for my MIDI programming. So that's how you can use this app to see what your MIDI controller is doing. So here's one thing that I've had to problem solve on is my ACK pad right here. So if you're not familiar with this is a device that goes on your acoustic guitar and you can play pads and stuff on there. I had to learn to program this. And I had no idea what each of the pads did. Turn it this way so it's a little bit easier to see. So what I did is I connected to it with Bluetooth. If you don't know how to do that, you go to your audio MIDI setup. If you can't find your audio MIDI setup, just go to your search bar and type audio MIDI setup. You go to Window, Show MIDI Studio, and then click over here on this Bluetooth icon, and you connect whatever you need to connect to. So I've connected to my ACK pad now. So I had no idea what this button did. So now when I push it, so why is it not working? Why is this? I'm not getting any information. You got to go up to your sources. And right now, my ACK pad Bluetooth is not selected. Select it. And now it's going to tell me that this is sending a G sharp 1. And you can see that it's pressure sensitive too, depending on how hard I hit it or how soft I hit it. So if I hit it softer, it gets a lighter value, and harder, it gets a harder value. So this next one is C1, D -1. What does this slider do? It's controller change 63. This one right here, controller change 62. these controllers, it's giving me all the information that I need. And it's also really cool so I can figure out. So right now it's sending on channel 1. If I move this to 2, it now sends on channel 2, channel 4. So now I know that this changes the channels. I never quite understood what those do. So that might be because those aren't, well, yeah. So then see, when you start sending information like this, portamento time, foot control, controller 3, breath control, which I believe is 2, you're going to have to kind of look those up to see what those are. So the modulation wheel, which is CC1. So just, some of it might give you some information. You're going to have to be like, what is breath control? What is modulation wheel? Stuff like that, but still very useful. So here's where it gets a little complicated. So this is my Rolly block. It's an MPE, multi-polyphonic expression, I believe that stands for. Just touching one thing, it gives me a lot of information. And especially if I move around, you can see how much different information is going through here. This is where it might be more helpful to turn off some of this information. I don't need the pitch wheel. I don't need the channel pressure. I just want to know what this button does. So now I can see that it is sending a D1. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong one. F sharp 1. Make sense? Now, it does give me a little bit more information that I don't really need to know anyways, but just to know what this is, it might be helpful to turn off some of this information. And here's another one. So when I push play on my dusty MIDI controller, you see this MIDI clock just going right here. Now I could turn it off by just pushing stop, but if you're getting a signal like this, I've plugged in before and it just gets an endless cycle of this. So when I try to see, oh, what does this do? It just scrolls on super fast like a YouTube live comment section and you can't read it. So what I can do is I can go up here and I can turn off the clock information. Now it's not sending clock information. Now I can start pushing these buttons and I can find out what they do. Make sense? It's really helpful just to find out what information your MIDI controller is sending. So obviously you can change the sources in here and you can filter different messages if you don't want to receive them. Turning like the system exclusive ones off, I've found to be helpful sometimes as well. Do you want to read on certain channels or just one specific channel? So if I just wanted to read everything that was coming in on channel 4, I could set it there. You can also say how many events do you want it to remember and then delete it. And you can also clear so that when you get a full screen of notes, you can clear it. And then when you quit, it does ask, do you want to save it? So you can save the information for another time. Pretty cool app. Okay, so next up, you can also do this using an app called MIDI Wrench right here. So what you do is you connect your device to your iPad or your iPhone if you want to do it this way instead of on a computer. And it's very, very similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to connect to this over Bluetooth. So the way that you do that is you use the app MIDI Meter. I've done this in a lot of my videos. You go to Devices. So you load up MIDI Meter, go to Devices, connect to the device that you want to connect to. It found it, it's connected. So now I go back to MIDI Wrench. And you can see it's found my light pad block. So now when I push a key, it gives me a similar information right here. And again, the Rolly is going to give me so much information. It's almost overwhelming. It gives me all the information here that I want. And then you can go to your settings and you can say, ignore system exclusive, ignore control change, ignore clocks, ignore active sense. So let's do that. And now I get a little bit less information, especially with all the pressure that this one, because you can push harder or softer on it. You're going to get a lot of information from that. But I'm just showing you, again, you can use this to figure out what any button does as long as you just connect it to your iPad, either over Bluetooth or with a standard, USB connection. Or if you haven't seen it, you should check out my video on the MIDI Master, which converts 5-pin MIDI into wireless Bluetooth MIDI, which is pretty awesome. But this pretty much works the same way as MIDI Monitor. It's just for the iPad. I prefer MIDI Monitor personally, but this one will work as well. So just a few bonus things before I go. You might know this in Logic. You actually do get a little bit of information up here. Go to set it to custom. You should get this little box right here. And this will tell you when you push like a key. So for example, when I push this pad right here, it tells me that I'm pushing C1. Let me move my mouse so you can see that. C1, C sharp 1, D1, stuff like that. Now, it doesn't always work, but sometimes when you move a slider, so you can see I'm not getting any information. But if I move this one, it's telling me up here that it's channel 1 and it's on controller 3. Right here, it's controller 9, but then I start to move this one and it doesn't show information. So you do get a little bit of information in Logic, but it won't be as much as you get in the MIDI Monitor app. Okay, and then last but not least, the MIDI Learn feature. So this one is actually really the most beneficial, I think, in Ableton, because Ableton's amazing because it has this MIDI map button right here. You click anything that's purple and you want to assign a controller to that. So let's say on this knob, on send A, even if you don't understand how to use Ableton, this will make sense. I'm going to move this slider, and it found up here, it says CC18 is going to be assigned to this, to the send A. So now when I get out of MIDI map mode and I start moving it, you'll see that it moves up and down. So that's what's amazing about Ableton, but I can also find out just what everything does by turning on that MIDI mapping and then pulling a fader, and it'll tell me what CC this one is sending. So now if I say I want to trigger this clip using this knob, it signed it to CC9. So now I know that this does CC9. I want to do it, switch this knob, send CC14, this knob, CC15, this knob, CC18 or 24, so on and so forth. Really beneficial. Now, MIDI Learn is great because you don't even need to necessarily know what it's doing. So again, if I just want to assign this in Ableton using MIDI Learn, or let's do another one. I'm going to assign this one. I'm going to assign that to this slider right here. And now it's mapped. So now when I get out of MIDI map mode, when I move this slider, whoops, wrong one, it moves send B. And I don't even really need to know what that does. So MIDI Learn is great in that sense. If you're not familiar with using MIDI Learn, you don't even have to know what this slider does. You just say, hey, I want to assign this slider. I want you to learn this command to that parameter. And you don't even have to know what it does. It's just automatically mapped to it, which is pretty cool. And then just to wrap up, MIDI Learn doesn't even just have to apply with MIDI, although it usually does, but you can do it also for expression pedals or even MIDI inputs on like something like the HX Stomp actually has that. So if I go to this view and I say I want this button right here to control turning on and off the delay on this preset. So I go here, I go to bypass assign, and right now it's currently set to something, so I'm going to turn that off. But if I scroll over, it says learn. So I press learn. It says press or move a switch, and I'm going to do that. And it learned, hey, when I push this, it turns it on and off. Make sense? Pretty cool. So that's basically it. Hope it helped you guys out and hope it helped you with your MIDI problem solving. If you're still confused after this, I do MIDI consulting on my website. If you want to check that out, if you still have questions, that is something that you can hire me to help you out with. If you guys made it to the end of this video, I just ask that you hit the like button if this helped you out in any way. Even if you don't subscribe, just hitting a like does help push the video out into the YouTube algorithm, so I'd really appreciate it. And it does help out my channel, but of course I won't be upset if you subscribe as well. So I hope this helped you guys out. If you guys have any other apps or anything that does help with MIDI problem solving, please leave them in a comment down below. Don't forget to check out my MIDI playlist of all my other MIDI videos. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.